There are moments in life that cannot be undone. Moments that split your existence into two versions of yourself. The before and the after. And mine happened on an empty street at 10:30 at night, when the red and blue lights of a police cruiser flooded my rearview mirror. My name is Lucas Morrison. I'm 28 years old. I work remotely as a graphic designer for an ad agency. And up until that night, I thought I had everything under control. That I could keep things separate. The version of me my parents knew. The version my friends saw. The version no one could question. But control is just another word for a well-told lie. It was an ordinary Tuesday. I was driving home after dinner with a client, through the quiet streets of my neighborhood in Portland. That kind of urban silence that only exists after 10 at night, when families are already inside and the bars haven't started emptying out yet. The only company I had was my mother on the phone, because of course, she never let a day go by without reminding me of who I was supposed to be. Her voice echoed over the speakerphone while I gripped the steering wheel with my left hand and tried to massage the tension out of my neck with my right. "Lucas, you need to stop stalling. It's been 3 months since you brought Marina over for dinner. Your father is starting to think it's strange. He asked if you two had a fight." Sarah. The girlfriend I used as a cover. The lie I'd been keeping up for 8 months because my mother couldn't accept that. At 28, I was still single. Because in her head, being single was synonymous with something being wrong. Single meant I had failed somehow. And she wasn't completely wrong. Something was wrong. It just wasn't what she imagined. "Mom, I already told you, we're super busy at work. She has her projects, I have mine. We barely have time to see each other." My voice came out calm, rehearsed. I had repeated these phrases so many times they sounded automatic. Like a recording. Like a mask I put on every morning and only took off when I was sure I was completely alone. "That's no excuse, Lucas. You need to pay more attention to that girl. Otherwise she's going to dump you and you'll be alone again. And look, it's not easy to find a nice girl these days. Your Aunt Carol mentioned the other day that her neighbor's daughter." I stopped listening. My brain just shut down. Because if I kept listening, I was going to explode. I was going to scream. I was going to speak the truth that had been burning in my throat for years. And I couldn't do that. I couldn't disappoint my parents. I couldn't be that news they'd have to digest, process, maybe never accept. It was exactly at that moment that I ran the red light. I didn't even notice. My vision was blurred with frustration. My hands were shaking on the wheel, and by the time I saw the red light, it was too late. The intersection was empty. No cars, no real danger. But the law doesn't care about details like that. The first sign was the lights. Red and blue, flashing in my rearview mirror like a racing heart. Then came the siren. Short, sharp. A warning. A command. My stomach dropped. Lucas, are you listening to me?" I hung up the phone on reflex, without even answering. My hands were already sweaty, my heart beating so fast I could feel the pulse in my temples. I pulled over slowly, trying to control my breathing, trying to think. "It's okay. It's just a violation. You ran a light, you'll get a ticket. That's all. Breathe." But that wasn't all. Because as I gripped the wheel and watched the officer get out of the cruiser in the rearview mirror, a wave of completely disproportionate panic took over me. It wasn't fear of a ticket. It wasn't fear of getting points on my license. It was the fear of being seen. Really seen. And I don't know why, but in that moment, with the red and blue lights still flashing behind me and the sound of the officer's footsteps approaching on the pavement, I had the distinct feeling that something was about to change. That this wasn't just another ordinary moment in my carefully constructed life. I looked in the mirror again and could see his silhouette approaching. Tall, broad shoulders, firm, confident walk. He wore a military police uniform, bulletproof vest fitted to his chest, dark beret. Even from a distance, you could tell he wasn't like the younger cops I'd seen at checkpoints. He had that presence. That natural authority that doesn't need to shout to be noticed. And that's when I realized the paperwork. My car registration was expired. I'd forgotten to renew it 3 months ago. And that wasn't all. There was that. detail. That little adjustment my cousin had made to the document. An altered date. A forged signature. No big deal, he had said. Everyone does it. No one checks. It's just until you renew it for real. Except now, with the police officer approaching my window, that little adjustment seemed like the worst decision of my life. My breathing grew shallow. My hands were shaking. I tried to wipe the sweat on my pants, but it was useless. My entire body was on high alert, and I couldn't understand if it was because of the document or because of something else. Something deeper. More terrifying. Because deep down, I always knew that one day everything would crumble. That the lies would pile up to the point where I could no longer sustain their weight. And maybe, just maybe, that moment had arrived. The officer stopped next to my window and tapped lightly on the glass with his knuckles. 2 taps, firm but not aggressive. I rolled down the window slowly, and the cold night air rushed in along with the smell of wet asphalt and a faint trace of cigarette smoke. And then I really saw him. He must have been about 34, 35. Short, dark brown hair, cropped close on the sides. Intense brown eyes that seemed to see far more than they should. A small scar above his left eyebrow, almost imperceptible under the dim streetlight. Strong jaw, serious expression, but not harsh, not cruel. He bent down a little to get to window level, and I noticed the badge on his chest, name engraved in black letters on the silver nameplate. Raphael Bennett. Good evening. License and registration, please. The voice was deep, firm, the kind of voice that doesn't brook argument. But there was something there, something I couldn't define, a hidden softness, as if he were reading something in me that even I couldn't name. I forced a tense, lopsided smile and reached for the glove box, but my fingers were trembling so much I dropped my wallet on the floor. Sorry, I'm nervous. My voice came out higher than I would have liked, almost childish. I noticed. He didn't smile, but his tone changed. It became softer, curious. Any specific reason? I picked the wallet up off the floor, tried to compose myself. No, it's just that I've never been pulled over before. And I know I ran the light. It was an accident. I was distracted. He took my driver's license and the car registration, studied the papers in silence for a few seconds that felt like hours. I held my breath, heart racing, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Please don't notice. Don't look too closely. Don't notice. But he noticed. His eyes narrowed slightly as he examined the car registration. He turned the paper against the streetlight, as if looking for something. And then he looked up at me, direct, piercing. This registration is irregular. I felt the ground drop out from under me. Irregular? What do you mean? The renewal date has been altered, and this signature here. He pointed to the corner of the paper. Doesn't match the DMV standard. It's forged. My brain short-circuited. I thought about denying it. I thought about making up some excuse. I thought about saying I didn't know anything, that my cousin had taken care of it for me and I had no idea. But when I opened my mouth, nothing came out. Because the way he was looking at me wasn't judgmental. It wasn't angry. It was curiosity. As if he were trying to understand something. As if I were a puzzle he wanted to solve. You realize a fake document is a crime, right? He said, and his tone was serious. But again, there was that strange softness. As if he weren't trying to scare me. As if he were giving me a chance. I swallowed hard. I know. It was a mistake. My cousin did it. I shouldn't have accepted. I was broke at the time, and he said it was just until I could renew it for real. I know it was wrong. I didn't think that you'd get caught. Silence. He stared at me for a few more seconds, and I felt like he was seeing right through me. as if all the layers I'd built up over the years were being peeled away one by one, and he was seeing what was underneath. The truth, the fear, the shame. "Step out of the car," he said finally, taking a step back. My blood ran cold. "What?" "Step out of the car. Come with me to the cruiser." I couldn't move. My body just locked up. Because this wasn't just about the document. This was about everything. About all the lies. About all the fake versions of myself I had created. About the constant panic of being found out, of being exposed. And now, there, on that empty street, under the flashing lights of Rafael Costa's cruiser, I felt like all those lies were about to crumble at once. "Lucas." He said my name, and something about the way he spoke made my heart beat even faster. It wasn't an order. It was almost an invitation. "I just want to talk. You're not being arrested. Yet. But I need to understand a few things." Yet. The word echoed in my mind as I opened the car door with shaky legs and stepped out into the cold night air. Rafael took a step back, giving me room, but his eyes never left me. That look. Intense. Calculating. But not threatening. And as I walked toward his cruiser, feeling the weight of every step, a single question hammered in my head. Why am I more scared of his gaze than of being arrested? The cruiser was about 10 meters away, but every step seemed to last an eternity. I reached the side of his car and stopped. I didn't know if I should get in, wait, or run. My heart was beating so hard I was sure he could hear it. Rafael opened the back door with a firm but not aggressive movement. It wasn't the back door of a regular cruiser. It was a door that said I had crossed a line, that I wasn't just a driver with an expired license anymore. I was someone who had something to hide. I got in slowly, feeling the cold leather seat against my back. The smell of the cruiser. That smell of metal, leather, authority. The smell of consequences. Rafael closed the door behind me and walked around the car. I saw his reflection in the window. The controlled movements. The upright posture. Everything about him screamed control. Everything about him screamed power. And me? I was just a 28-year-old guy sitting in the back of a squad car, hands shaking and stomach churning. He opened the driver's door and got in. The silence that filled the car was suffocating. I could hear his very breathing. Calm. Measured. As if he had all the time in the world. I, on the other hand, was holding my breath without even realizing it. Rafael turned his head slightly in my direction, but didn't look directly at me. He took my car registration that was in his hand and started examining it with an attention that made me break out in a cold sweat. Silence. 1, 2, 3 seconds that felt like hours. And then he spoke. His voice was low, controlled, but there was something different about it. Something I couldn't identify. "Lucas, this registration has been tampered with." I closed my eyes. That's it. It's over. Now come the handcuffs, the police station, the criminal record, the shame. Now comes everything I've always been afraid of. I tried to swallow hard, but my throat was so dry it hurt. "I know," I whispered. My voice came out weak, barely audible. Rafael finally turned to me. Those intense brown eyes were now staring directly at me. Not with anger, not with contempt, but with something I didn't expect. Curiosity. "You know I have to arrest you for this, right?" "I know." Silence again. But this time it was different. It wasn't the silence of waiting. It was the silence of someone deciding something. Weighing options. Considering possibilities. Rafael let out a long sigh and rested his arm on the passenger seat, turning his body completely toward me. His posture changed. He wasn't the rigid cop anymore. He was something else. "But I'm not going to do that right now," he said. I snapped my head up. "What? Not yet. I want to understand something first." My heart raced again, but this time it wasn't just fear. It was confusion. It was hope. It was a bunch of things I couldn't separate. Understand what? He tilted his head slightly, as if analyzing every detail of my face, every micro-expression, every tremor. "Why are you so nervous, Lucas?" I let out a humorless laugh. "Seriously? I'm sitting in the back of a squad car with fake papers. I think I have reasons to be nervous." Raphael didn't smile. He just kept looking at me. That gaze that pierced, that disarmed, that saw beyond. "No. You were already nervous before I found the papers. You were already nervous when I pulled you over. You were nervous when I approached your car, and you're nervous now, but it's not just about the papers." I felt my stomach churn. How did he know? How could he see that? "I don't know what you're talking about," I lied. Badly. Raphael gave a small smile. It wasn't mocking. It was almost gentle. "Okay. Let me rephrase. Why did you look away when I asked if everything was okay? Why were your hands shaking before I even took the papers? Why does it look like you're running from something that has nothing to do with traffic?" I felt tears burning in my eyes, but I forced them back. "No, not here. Not now. Not in front of him. I just want to go home," I whispered. Raphael stayed silent for a while, but he didn't take his eyes off me. And in that silence, something changed. The tension in the air didn't disappear, but it transformed. It stopped being the tension of fear and became the tension of something I couldn't name. He sighed again and adjusted his belt, shifting his position in the seat. The light from the street lamp outside came through the window and illuminated half his face, leaving the other half in shadow. "I see a lot of people every day, Lucas. Drunk drivers, people without licenses, angry people, scared people. But you're different." "Different how?" I asked, and my voice came out weaker than I wanted. "You're not afraid of me. You're afraid of yourself." I felt the air vanish from my lungs, like he had just punched me in the gut, like he had seen through all the layers of lies I had built over the years. I opened my mouth to deny it, to laugh, to do anything to break that moment. But nothing came out, because he was right. Raphael leaned forward, bringing his face closer to mine. Not in a threatening way. In a way that seemed to say he was offering me something. Space, safety, understanding. "Look, I don't know what you're going through, and maybe it's none of my business, but if you want to talk, really talk, I'm here. No badge, no squad car, just me and you." I looked at him, really looked. And for the first time since he had pulled me over, I saw beyond the uniform, beyond the authority, beyond the cop posture. I saw a man who somehow seemed to understand things I had never spoken out loud. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. "Why don't you just arrest me and get it over with?" "Because I've been where you are," he said. "And back then, I wished someone had given me the chance to be honest, to be myself, even if only for 5 minutes." My heart stopped. I wanted to ask what he meant by that. I wanted to understand. But before I could say anything, Raphael leaned back in the seat and crossed his arms, staring at me with that intensity that completely disarmed me. "So I'm going to ask you a question, Lucas, and I want you to be honest with me, not as a cop, as someone who's trying to help you." He paused, briefly, but long enough for the weight of his next words to settle in the air even before they were spoken. "Why are you really afraid right now?" And in that moment, sitting in the back of that cruiser, with the amber street lamp light streaming through the window and the smell of leather thick in the air, I realized that the answer to that question was going to change everything. Because for the first time in my life, someone was giving me permission to be real, And that somehow was more terrifying than any prison. I opened my mouth, closed it again. The words vanished as if they had never existed. I tried to laugh, one of those nervous, automatic laughs we use when trying to dodge something important. It came out crooked, forced. Even I didn't buy it. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, staring at my hands in my lap. "I mean, yeah, I'm nervous. Obviously. You're a cop. I forged a document. That's kinda obvious, isn't it?" Raphael didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, in that way of his, like he was reading every word I wasn't saying, like he could see through all the layers of defense I had built up over the years. And you know what the worst part is? He didn't look judgmental. He didn't look annoyed. He looked curious, genuinely interested, like someone who had seen this scene before in someone else and recognized the signs. "Yeah, you're nervous," he said slowly, almost whispering. "But it's not just because of the paperwork. I've stopped dozens of people with fake IDs, Lucas, and none of them looked at me the way you're looking right now." My stomach knotted. I felt my face heat up. "And what way am I looking?" I managed to ask, still trying to maintain some control over the situation. "Like someone running from something," he replied, not looking away. "But not from me. From yourself." There it was. The naked truth thrown between us like a card on the table. I could have denied it. I could have deflected again. I could have done what I always did when someone got too close to the truth: build another wall, invent another excuse, smile, and pretend everything was fine. But something in the way Raphael spoke, in the way his voice carried no accusation, only observation, made me pause. I don't know what you're talking about," I repeated. But this time my voice came out weak, barely audible. Even I didn't believe it. "It's okay," he said softly, leaning forward slightly. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to. But I'm going to tell you something, Lucas." He paused, ran a hand through his short, dark hair, a gesture that seemed more human than anything I expected from a cop in that moment. "I've been the person running from something too," he continued. And for the first time since the conversation started, I saw something different in his eyes, something softer, more vulnerable. "I know what it's like to wake up every day and put on a mask, to pretend to be someone you're not just because it's easier than facing what everyone will think if you take it off." My heart raced. It wasn't possible. He wasn't saying what I thought he was saying, was he? I swallowed hard, my hands trembling slightly in my lap. You know, Raphael gave a half smile, small, almost sad. "I know enough to recognize someone carrying a weight they shouldn't have to carry alone." And that was when something inside me started to crack. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't like in the movies, where the character breaks down in convulsive sobbing and spills their whole story at once. It was more subtle. It was as if a tiny crack had appeared in a wall I'd spent years building, brick by brick, lie by lie, forced smile by forced smile. And through that crack, finally, light began to enter. "I don't know how to be anything else," I said, my voice raspy, shaky. "My family. They expect me to be one person. Everyone expects me to be a certain person, and I always was. I always managed to be. But lately..." I stopped, trying to organize my thoughts, trying to find the right words for something I had never put into words before. "Lately what?" Raphael asked gently, and there was no rush in his voice. No judgment. Just space. Space for me to speak, or not speak. The choice was mine. "Lately, I feel like if I keep being this person, I'm going to disappear completely," I confessed, and it was as if someone had pulled a thread and the whole structure started to unravel. "I feel like every time I pretend, every time I smile and agree and do what everyone expects of me, I lose a piece of who I really am. And one day I'm going to wake up and there will be nothing left." The silence that followed was thick, but not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that happens when someone truly hears what you just said. when someone understands. Raphael nodded slowly, as if every word I had said made perfect sense to him. "You're afraid of disappearing," he said, not as a question, but as a statement. "And at the same time, you're afraid of appearing, because showing up for real means people will see who you really are, and you don't know if they'll accept it." I closed my eyes, feeling the tears burn behind my eyelids. I didn't cry. Not yet. But I was close. Very close. "How do you know?" I asked, opening my eyes and finally, looking directly at him. "How do you know exactly what I'm feeling?" Raphael held my gaze, and for a second, just a second, I saw in him the same fear I carried, the same weight, the same silent struggle. "Because I've been exactly where you are right now," he said softly. "And I know how much it hurts." The cruiser suddenly felt smaller, more intimate. The world outside, with its streetlights and empty roads, felt distant, unreal. It was just the two of us in that confined space, sharing something neither of us had planned to share. I took a deep breath, trying to control the wave of emotions threatening to swallow me whole. "I don't know what to do," I admitted, and it was the most honest thing I'd said in months, maybe years. "I don't know how to stop pretending. I don't know how to be myself." Raphael leaned even closer, close enough that I could feel his heat, his proximity, his solid presence right there, real, tangible. "You don't need to know everything all at once, Lucas," he said, and there was something comforting in the way he said my name. "You don't need to have all the answers right now, but you need to stop punishing yourself for not being who everyone else wants you to be." I nodded, feeling the first tear roll down my cheek. I wiped it away quickly, ashamed. But Raphael didn't look away. He didn't pretend he hadn't seen it. He just stayed there, present, offering something I didn't know I needed so badly: permission to be imperfect. "What if I don't know who I am without the mask?" I asked, my voice cracking at the end. "Then you figure it out," he answered simply. "And I can guarantee you one thing, Lucas. Who you really are is way more interesting than any version you're pretending to be." I laughed. It was a wet, broken sound, but it was genuine. For the first time that night, maybe for the first time in a long time, I wasn't pretending. "Do you always talk like this to the people you pull over?" I joked, trying to lighten the intensity of the moment. Raphael smiled. A real smile this time, one that reached his eyes and crinkled the corners. "Only the ones worth it." And in that moment, sitting in the back of that cruiser, with my defenses crumbling one by one, with the truth finally starting to leak through the cracks, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to carry it all alone. That maybe there was someone who could understand, someone who had been through this and survived. But along with the hope came fear. The paralyzing fear that if I kept talking, if I kept letting him see, there would be no going back. The mask would fall completely, and then I'd have to deal with everything underneath it. "I want to tell you," I said suddenly, surprising myself. "I want to tell you everything, but I don't know if I can. I don't know if I'm brave enough." Raphael looked at me with an intensity that made me feel naked, exposed, but in a way that wasn't uncomfortable. It was as if he could see every part of me that I'd hidden away, and yet hadn't turned his back. "Courage isn't about not being afraid, Lucas," he said softly. "Courage is being afraid and speaking up anyway. And you're already being brave just by being here, just by admitting you're scared." I felt my chin tremble. The words were right there on the tip of my tongue, ready to spill out. Everything I'd never said. Everything I'd kept inside for so long it felt like part of my very structure. "I am," I started, stopped, breathed. "I am." The words caught in my throat, heavy, terrifying, real. Raphael didn't rush me, he just waited, patient, present. And in that charged silence, with my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, with my hands shaking and my eyes welling up, I realized I was on the edge of something. On the edge of speaking the truth out loud for the first time in my life. The truth about who I was. The truth I had buried so deep that sometimes even I forgot it existed. But it existed. And it was fighting to get out. Fighting to be heard. Fighting to be free. I opened my mouth again, the words trembling on my lips, fear and hope swirling in a whirlwind inside my chest. And then, with the weakest and truest voice I had ever used in my life, I said, "I think I'm gay." The phrase came out almost as a whisper, but it came out, for the first time, out loud, real, undeniable. And the world didn't end. The roof of the cruiser didn't cave in. Raphael didn't pull away in horror. The earth didn't open up to swallow me. Instead, he just held my gaze. And after a moment that seemed to last an eternity and a second all at once, he nodded, slowly, gently, understanding. "Thank you for trusting me," he said softly. And there was something in his voice that felt like a hug. "I know how much it cost you to say that." And there, in that back seat, with the confession still echoing in the air between us, I finally breathed. For the first time in years, I truly breathed. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was almost sacred, like Raphael was giving me space to feel the weight of what I just admitted, of what I just said out loud for the first time in my entire life. "I think I'm gay." The words were still floating there, in the tight air of the cruiser, and I realized I was shaking. Not from cold, not exactly from fear, but from a kind of relief so intense my body didn't know how to process it. Raphael shifted in the front seat. I heard the leather creak as he turned sideways, resting his arm on the seat back to really look at me. His brown eyes met mine in the rearview mirror first, and then he turned completely. "Lucas," he said, and my own voice left my body when he said my name. "Thank you for trusting me." "Thank you?" I swallowed hard. I don't know why I said that. I don't even know you. I never. "You never said it out loud," Raphael finished for me. It wasn't a question. I shook my head, unable to speak. My throat was tight again, but this time for a different reason. Because he understood. He simply understood. "How long?" Raphael asked, and the gentleness in his voice was almost unbearable. "How long have you been carrying this alone?" I wanted to lie. My automatic response was always to lie, minimize, deflect. But there, in that moment, with that man looking at me as if I were something precious and fragile, I couldn't. "Forever," I whispered. Since I can remember. But I always thought it would pass, that it was just a phase, that I'd meet the right girl and everything would make sense. Raphael said nothing. He just nodded, as if every word I was saying made absolute sense to him. "My parents," I continued, and my voice began to crack. "They're religious, conservative. I'm an only child. Their only hope to carry on the family name, for grandkids, for..." I stopped. I breathed. I tried not to completely fall apart. "I have a girlfriend, Sarah. She's perfect. She's exactly the kind of woman my mother always dreamed I'd bring home. Beautiful, polite, from the same church. And she loves me. She really loves me." "And you?" Raphael asked softly. "Do you love her?" The question pierced my chest like a knife. "I care about her," I admitted, and the weight of that truth almost crushed me. "I care about her a lot. She's my best friend, but I don't feel what I'm supposed to feel. I don't feel what she feels for me. And it kills me. because she deserves someone who looks at her the way she looks at me. And I'm stealing that from her. I'm stealing her life while I pretend to have mine. My voice broke on the last word. I covered my face with my hands, still cuffed, and the cold metal against my forehead was the only thing keeping me anchored to reality. Every week, there's a family dinner, and every week my mom asks when I'm going to propose to Marina, and every week I lie. I smile and say, "Soon, Mom," and pretend I'm planning a future I know will never happen. I sobbed. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I wake up every day and put on a mask. I go to work and I pretend. I go out with her friends and I pretend. I kiss her and I pretend. I have sex with her and I pretend. And with every passing day, I feel more distant from who I really am. Like I'm fading away. Like the real Lucas is dying a little bit with every lie. The handcuffs jingled when I lowered my hands. My cheeks were wet. I hadn't even realized I was crying. And today, I continued, my voice barely a whisper now. Today I was coming back from another dinner where my mom kept showing wedding photos to Sarah, and I couldn't breathe right anymore. I was on the phone with her in the car, listening to her talk about invitation colors and guest lists, and I ran the red light. I didn't even see it. Because I was panicking, thinking, how am I going to marry her? How am I going to keep living this lie for the rest of my life? I looked at Raphael through my tears, and then you pulled me over and found the fake papers, and I thought I was going to jail, but somehow, it was a relief, because at least it would be a concrete reason for everything to fall apart. At least it wouldn't be my fault. The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear my own heart beating. I could hear the distant hum of the streetlights outside. I could hear Raphael breathing. And then he spoke, so softly I almost didn't hear. I understand. I looked up at him. How can you understand? Raphael held my gaze. There was something there, in his eyes. Something deep and painful and infinitely gentle. Because I've lived in hiding too, he said, and the world stopped. My heart raced. What? He leaned forward a bit, resting his elbows on his thighs, hands clasped, the posture of someone about to confess something he rarely said out loud. Not exactly in the same way as you, Raphael continued carefully. But I know what it's like to wake up every day and put on a mask. I know what it's like to be afraid that someone will see who you really are. I know what it's like to carry truths that make you question if you'll ever be able to be completely honest with the people you love. He paused, took a deep breath. And when he spoke again, there was a vulnerability in his voice I hadn't heard before. I work in a profession where there are very specific expectations about who you should be, about how you should act, about what you can or cannot feel. And for a long time, I tried to fit those expectations. I tried to be the version of myself everyone expected. The model cop, the tough guy, the straight man. My stomach churned. I'm not saying our situations are identical, Raphael interrupted gently. I'm not trying to steal your story. I'm just saying I recognize the weight you're carrying, because I've carried similar weights. He looked at his own hands. It took me a long time to accept that pretending to be who others wanted me to be was killing me inside. And there are still days where it's hard. There are still contexts where I choose not to reveal certain things about myself, because I know some truths come with too high a cost. Raphael raised his eyes to mine again, and this time, there was an intensity there that left me breathless. But what I've learned, Lucas, is that lying exacts an even higher price. Living divided between who you are and who you pretend to be. That's not living, it's surviving. And you deserve more than just survival. Tears rolled down my face again, but this time they were different. It wasn't despair. It was relief. It was recognition. It was the overwhelming feeling of finally being seen. I don't know what to do, I admitted, my voice cracking. I don't know how to stop lying. I don't know how to be honest without destroying everything. You don't need to figure it all out right now, Raphael said softly. You just needed to start. And you did. You spoke the truth out loud. To me. And perhaps, more importantly, to yourself. That is the first step. He moved closer, and suddenly I was acutely aware of how small the space between us was, of how his eyes seemed to see right through all my defenses. And you're not alone in this, Lucas. Not anymore. My heart was beating so hard I was sure he could hear it. Something was shifting in the air between us, something electric and terrifying and completely inevitable. Raphael tilted his head slightly, studying my face. And then, with a voice that was almost a purr, he said, "You know, I was thinking. There is an unconventional way for us to resolve this issue with your documentation." I blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" His eyes darkened a little. Or maybe it was just the light. Or maybe it was the way he was looking at me now, as if he were measuring something, deciding something. "You were honest with me today in a way few people are," Raphael said slowly, "and I think honesty deserves to be rewarded, not punished." He leaned in even closer. So close I could feel the heat of his body. So close I could see the golden flecks hidden in his brown eyes. "But first," he continued, and there was something in his voice that made my skin tingle. "I need to be sure that you trust me, that you're ready to trust someone for real." My heart was racing. My breathing was ragged. I didn't know exactly what he was suggesting, but every cell in my body was alert, awake, alive for the first time in years. "Do you trust me, Lucas?" The question hung between us like a challenge, like a promise, like an invitation to something I didn't have words to name, but that my whole body understood perfectly. I should be afraid. I should be cautious. I should remember that this man was a cop, that I was in his custody, that this was all madness. But all I could think was, he sees me. He understands me. And for the first time in my life, I'm not pretending. "Yes," I whispered, and it wasn't a lie. "I trust you." A slow, devastating smile curved Raphael's lips. He reached for his belt, and my stomach clenched when I heard the unmistakable sound of handcuffs being unclipped. "Good boy," he murmured, and the praise shot through my entire body like fire. The handcuffs glinted under the dashboard's dim light, the cold, solid metal in Raphael's hands. My heart beat so loud I was sure he could hear it filling that tiny space between us. Every beat was a question I didn't know how to ask out loud. He said nothing for a moment, just held the cuffs there, his eyes fixed on mine with an intensity that made me forget how to breathe. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't power. It was a silent question, an invitation wrapped in metal and possibilities. "Lucas," he said, and his voice was lower now, almost husky. "I'm going to ask you once. Do you want me to stop?" I should have said yes. Should have opened the cruiser door, got out, ran back to my safe, predictable life where I pretended to be who everyone expected me to be. But something inside me was too tired of running, tired of lying, tired of being afraid of what I really wanted. "No," I whispered, and the word came out like a confession I had been holding back my whole life. Raphael moved slowly, so slowly that every second seemed to stretch and fold around us. He reached out, his fingers grazing my left wrist with a delicacy that made my skin prickle. It wasn't rough. It wasn't the touch of a cop doing his job. It was the touch of someone who understood the weight of that moment. "Hands here," he murmured, guiding my wrists forward. I obeyed. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Because for the first time in my life, surrendering control didn't feel like weakness. It felt like freedom. The click of the first cuff locking around my wrist echoed through the cruiser like a bell. The sound was loud, definitive, irrevocable, I looked down at the gleaming metal binding my skin, and a wave of heat rose through my body. It wasn't fear. It was something else. Something I had never felt before. Raphael held my gaze as he locked the second cuff, his fingers lingering a little longer than necessary, his thumb tracing a soft circle on the inside of my wrist where my pulse hammered uncontrollably. "How do you feel?" he asked, and the question carried so much care it almost made me crumble. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice trembling. "I should feel trapped, but you don't," he finished, tilting his head slightly, his eyes sweeping over my face as if reading every thought I had. "No, I swallowed hard, trying to find the words. "I feel safe." Something flashed across his face, something that looked like surprise mixed with recognition, as if I had said exactly what he was expecting to hear. But he still couldn't believe I had the guts to say it out loud. "Safe," he repeated, savoring the word. "Do you know why?" I shook my head, unable to form words. Raphael leaned closer, so close I could see the golden flecks in his brown eyes, could feel the heat of his breath brushing against my skin. His hand moved up, slowly, until it touched my face, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw with a tenderness that made my throat tighten. "Because you finally stopped fighting yourself," he said, his voice low and steady. "You spent so much time afraid of being truly seen that you forgot what it's like to be accepted." His words hit me like a punch to the chest. Tears burned in my eyes and I blinked rapidly, trying to keep them in, but it was too late. One slipped out, and then another, tracing hot lines down my face. "Hey," Raphael whispered, wiping the tears away with his thumb. "No need to hide. Not from me." I let out a strangled laugh, half sob, half relief. "I don't know how to do that. How not to hide." "Then let me show you." He moved closer, his hand sliding from my jaw to the nape of my neck, fingers tangling in my hair. My wrists were trapped between us, the cold handcuffs pressing against his chest, and I had never felt so exposed and so protected at the same time. "You're trembling," he observed, lips curving into a soft smile. "I am," I admitted. "It's not from fear." "I know." And then he pulled me closer, eliminating that last inch of distance that still existed between us. My handcuffed wrists were trapped between our bodies, cold metal against the warm fabric of his shirt, and somehow that made everything feel more real, more undeniable. Raphael tilted his head, lips grazing my forehead, then my temple, then trailing slowly down to my ear. Every touch was deliberate, careful, as if he were giving me time to change my mind. But I didn't want to change my mind. I wanted to sink into that moment and never leave. He stopped there, lips pressed against my ear, hot breath making my skin prickle. And then he whispered, so low I almost didn't hear, but every syllable shot through my entire body like a lightning bolt. "Good boy." I stopped breathing. Those two words. So simple. So small. But they carried a weight I wasn't prepared to feel. It wasn't condescension. It wasn't power. It was recognition. It was acceptance. It was him saying he saw me, truly, and that what he saw wasn't something that needed to be hidden or fixed or ashamed of. It was validation of the kind I had never received, of the kind I didn't even know I was desperate to hear until the words left his mouth and something inside me broke and rebuilt itself at the same time. A sound escaped my throat, something between a sigh and a whimper, and I leaned into him without thinking, seeking more of that warmth, more of that acceptance, more of the feeling that I was finally being seen. "Raphael," I whispered, his name coming out broken. "I know," he murmured against my skin. "I know, Lucas." He held me like that for a time that could have been seconds or hours. I had no way of knowing. The world outside had ceased to exist. There was only the squad car, the cramped seat, our bodies pressed together, and the cold handcuffs on my wrists that somehow had turned into a symbol of something completely different from what they were supposed to be. When he finally pulled away, just enough to look into my face, his eyes were dark and intense. "Do you understand what just happened here?" he asked. I shook my head, still dizzy, still processing. "You allowed yourself to be vulnerable," he said, hand still on the back of my neck, fingers applying a comforting pressure. "And I showed you that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's courage." "I don't feel brave," I confessed, voice hoarse, "because you don't know what courage looks like when it comes from within." Raphael tilted his head, his gaze piercing mine. "But I do. And I see it in you now." Something inside me expanded with those words, something warm and terrifying and powerful. I wanted to believe him, wanted to believe I could be that person he was describing. "What if I don't know how to be that person?" I asked, and the question came out loaded with all the fear I had carried for so long. Raphael smiled, slow and devastating, the kind of smile that made my stomach flip. "Then you practice, one day at a time, one choice at a time." He paused, thumb tracing my jaw again. "And if you need help, you have my number." My heart raced at that. The promise implied in those words, the suggestion that this wasn't just a moment, that it could be more. "You want to help me?" I asked, barely able to believe it. "I want you to help yourself," he corrected, voice firm but gentle. "But yes, I'll be here if you need me." Tears burned in my eyes again, but this time I didn't fight them. I let them fall freely, let Raphael wipe them away with his fingertips, let him see me completely undone and still not walk away. He reached for the handcuffs, his fingers working the release mechanism, and I felt a strange pang of loss when the metal popped open and fell from my wrists. I looked at the red skin where the cuffs had been, the marks already starting to fade, and something inside me wanted to ask him to put them back on. But I didn't ask, because I understood what he was doing. He was showing me that I didn't need them, that the feeling of safety, of acceptance, of being seen, didn't come from the metal. It came from the choice, from trust, from the act of allowing myself to be vulnerable with someone who wouldn't use that against me. Raphael took my wrists, rubbing gently where the handcuffs had been, and his touch was so careful that it made my throat tighten again. "Are you okay?" he asked, looking up, his eyes searching mine. "I am," I said, and for the first time in a long time, it was true. "I'm better than okay." He smiled, that slow smile that made my whole world tilt on its axis, and for a moment we just sat there in that cramped squad car, his hands still holding my wrists, our faces inches apart. The silence was heavy but not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that happens when something fundamental changes, when you realize the person you were 5 minutes ago isn't the person you are now. "What happens now?" I finally asked, my voice low. Raphael released my wrists slowly, his fingers lingering a little longer than necessary. "Now you go home," he said, and there was something in his tone that felt like a promise. "And you think about what happened here, about what you want, about who you want to be." "And you?" I asked, unable to hide the desperation in my voice. The thought of getting out of that squad car and never seeing him again made me feel like I was drowning. "I'll be around," he said, his voice steady. "When you're ready to take the next step, you know where to find me." He grabbed a card from the car, wrote something on the back, and handed it to me. I looked down and saw his number written in black ink, the digits firm and clear. "Don't lose that," he said, his tone carrying weight. "And don't take too long to call me." I held the card as if it were the most precious thing in the world, because maybe it was. Maybe that piece of paper represented the chance to build something real with someone who truly saw me, without masks and without lies. "I won't lose it," I promised, tucking the card into my pocket. Raphael nodded, satisfied, and slowly pulled back, giving me space to breathe, to process, to start understanding what had just happened. I put my hand on the door handle but hesitated. There was something I needed to say, something that had been stuck in my throat since he'd whispered those words in my ear. "Raphael," I said, turning back to look at him. "Yeah? Thank you." The word seemed inadequate for what I was feeling, but it was all I had. He gave me that slow smile again, the one that made my stomach flip. "Don't thank me yet," he said. "The hard part is still to come." I knew he was right. I knew that getting out of that squad car and facing my real life, my family, my choices, was going to be infinitely harder than sitting here and letting him see me. But for the first time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could do it. Because I wasn't alone anymore. Because someone had looked at me and seen who I really was, and hadn't turned away. Because 2 simple words had broken something inside me and let the light in. I opened the car door, the cold night air hitting my face, and for a moment I just stayed there, 1 foot in and 1 foot out, caught between 2 worlds. "Lucas!" Raphael called out, and I looked back. "Remember what I said. Courage isn't not being afraid, it's acting even when you are." I nodded, not trusting my voice not to crack. And then I got out. I closed the door behind me. I walked back to my car under the amber streetlights. Every step felt strange, as if my body didn't remember exactly how to walk after everything that had happened. I got into my car, shut the door, and just sat there for a long moment, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I could see Raphael's cruiser in the rearview mirror, still parked there, the red and blue lights off now. I lifted one hand, looking at the wrist where the handcuffs had been. The skin was slightly red, but it didn't hurt. It was just a memory, proof that it had been real. I touched the mark with my fingers, tracing the outline, and something inside me settled. Something that had been restless and scared for so long had finally found a place to rest. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. A message. I picked it up, heart racing, and saw the unknown number on the screen. "Drive safe on the way home. And when you're ready to talk, you know where to find me. R." I read the message 3 times, etching every word into my memory, and then I typed the reply before my courage abandoned me. "Thanks for seeing me. For real. For the first time, I think I'm ready to start seeing myself too." I sent it before I could rethink. And when the 3 dots appeared indicating he was typing, my heart nearly burst out of my chest. "That's the first step. I'm proud of you. Now go home and get some rest. Tomorrow is a new day." Proud. He was proud of me. A cop I had met less than an hour ago, who had seen me completely vulnerable and broken, was proud of me. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In the end, I did both. I started the car with hands still trembling, checked the mirrors 3 times more than necessary, and finally pulled off the shoulder. Raphael's cruiser remained parked as I drove away, but I could feel his eyes following me until I turned the corner and disappeared into the night. The city passed by the windows, the same streets I had driven 1,000 times before, but everything seemed different now. The lights were brighter. The air was cleaner. I could breathe deeper. Something had changed inside me in that cruiser, something fundamental. And as I drove back home, to the life I had built on lies and fear, I realized I couldn't go back to that version of myself anymore. Raphael had said the hard part was yet to come, and he was right. But he had also given me something I had never had before: hope. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to start. The silence inside the car was different now. It wasn't the oppressive silence of unspoken truths, the kind that suffocated me during family dinners or phone calls with my mom. It was a silence full of possibilities, of a future. I still felt the ghost of the handcuffs on my wrists. the memory of Raphael's voice against my ear. Good boy. 2 words that had pierced through 28 years of shame as if it had never existed. It was strange how such a simple phrase could rewrite a whole life. I always thought that if anyone ever truly saw me, if anyone discovered who I really was, it would be the end of my family, the end of my peace, the end of any chance of being loved. But Raphael had seen me, and he hadn't run away. He had stayed. He had held me. He had whispered those words against my skin like a promise that I deserved to be seen, deserved to exist without hiding. I still didn't know how I would tell my family. I still didn't know how I would face my mother's looks of disappointment or my father's wounded silence. I still didn't know if I could survive the loss that would inevitably come. But for the first time in my life, I knew that surviving meant more than just continuing to exist. It meant living, for real. The traffic light ahead of me turned red, the same kind of signal I had ignored hours ago and that had started all this. This time, I stopped, and while I waited for the light to change, I looked into the rearview mirror. It was the same face I saw every day, the same dark eyes, the same messy hair, the same worry lines around the mouth that appeared when I forced smiles during family gatherings. But something was different. For the first time, I didn't look away from myself. I didn't look for flaws. I didn't judge myself for what I saw. I simply looked and thought, this is me, Lucas Mendez, graphic designer, 28 years old, gay. The word didn't burn me like it used to. I didn't shrink internally. I didn't feel the familiar wave of panic rising in my throat. I just breathed, and the words sat there, simple and true. Gay. I am gay. The light turned green, and I kept driving. The streets of Portland passed by the window, the same streets I traveled every day, but everything seemed slightly different now. The colors were more vivid, the outlines more defined, as if I had spent my whole life looking at the world through foggy glass, and someone had finally wiped it clean. My phone vibrated in the holder next to the steering wheel, a notification on the screen. Unknown number. But I knew who it was. Raphael. My fingers trembled as I waited to get home to check the message. Every block seemed longer than it should. Every traffic light an eternity. When I finally parked in front of my building, I grabbed the phone with both hands to keep from dropping it. The message was simple. Did you get home safe? R. 5 words, 1 initial, and somehow, that meant everything. Someone cared if I had made it home, not because of family obligation or social courtesy, but because he genuinely wanted to know if I was okay. I typed and deleted 5 different answers before finally writing, yes, thank you for everything today. The reply came almost immediately. The hard part is still to come, Lucas. But you don't have to face it alone. I stared at those words until they started to blur. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time in a long time, I felt something I couldn't quite name. Gratitude, perhaps. Relief. Or maybe just the feeling of being seen and not rejected. Of being known and still being called good. I climbed the stairs to my apartment, every step feeling lighter than it used to. Even the familiar sound of the lock, the smell of stale morning coffee, the organized clutter of my desk, everything seemed different under this new light. It was the same space, but I wasn't the same person who had left it a few hours ago. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at my hands, the same hands that designed logos for clients, that held the phone during tense conversations with my family, that shook every time someone asked if I was seeing anyone special. These hands had been in handcuffs today, and somehow, that had set me free. I didn't know what would happen with Raphael. If that text exchange would lead to anything or if it would fade away like so many broken promises. I didn't know if I could muster the courage to tell my family. I didn't know if I'd survive the rejection that might follow. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't sit through family dinners smiling while suffocating on the inside. I couldn't avoid my own reflection anymore. I couldn't keep building an entire life around lies just because it was easier than facing the truth. Raphael had given me something I didn't even know I was looking for. Permission. Permission to exist, to be seen, to take up space without apologizing for it. And maybe that wouldn't solve everything. Maybe there were still difficult conversations ahead, inevitable losses, pain I'd have to walk through before reaching the other side. But for the first time, I felt like there was another side. That it wasn't just darkness and rejection waiting for me. That maybe, just maybe, there was a future where I didn't have to choose between being loved and being myself. My phone buzzed again. Sleep well, Lucas. You were brave today. Brave. I had never seen myself that way. I always saw myself as a coward. The guy who chose comfortable lies over painful truths. The guy who pretended to be someone he wasn't just to keep the peace. But maybe Raphael was right. Maybe true courage wasn't about never being afraid. Maybe it was being afraid and choosing to be honest anyway. Choosing to be seen. I typed back, "You too. Thanks for seeing me." The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Finally. Always, Lucas, always. I held the phone to my chest and let the tears come. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of something breaking inside me. Something that needed to break so I could finally start rebuilding myself. For the first time in 28 years, I cried not because I was hiding, but because I had finally stopped. And that changed everything. I got out of bed and went to the window. Outside, Portland slept under the city lights. The same streets where I'd grown up, hidden, built walls so high even I couldn't climb them anymore. But something was different now. For the first time, I looked at that city and didn't feel fear. I felt possibility. And as I stood there, watching the lights blinking in the distance, I made a promise to myself. I won't live in fear anymore. I won't hide anymore. I won't pretend to be someone I'm not, just because it's easier, safer, more acceptable. I'm going to be me, completely, authentically. Even if it means losing people I love. Even if it means facing rejection and pain and all the fears I've spent a lifetime building. Because Raphael showed me something today. He showed me that being seen can be terrifying, but it can also be liberating. He showed me that there are people in this world who will see you for who you really are and won't run away. Who will hold you through the fear and whisper that it's okay. That you are enough exactly as you are. And maybe I don't know where this will lead me. Maybe the road ahead is still full of uncertainties and challenges and moments where I'll want to run back to the safety of the lie. But at least now I know there is a road. That there is a path between who I pretended to be and who I really am. And that I don't have to walk it alone. My phone buzzed one last time before I finally turned off the lights. Good night, Lucas. See you soon. See you soon. Not goodbye. Not nice to meet you. But see you soon. A promise of continuity. Of a future. I smiled in the dark. And this time, the smile was real. See you soon, Raphael. And as I finally let myself drift off to sleep, for the first time in years, I didn't dream of masks and lies and fake versions of myself. I dreamed of freedom, of the feeling of handcuffs clicking open, of the sound of a voice whispering in the dark, of the possibility of a tomorrow where I didn't have to choose between being loved and being real, because maybe, just maybe, I could be both. And that, I realized as sleep finally came, was all I ever wanted. To be seen, to be known, to be accepted. Not in spite of who I am, but exactly because of who I am. Good boy, Raphael's voice echoed in my memory. Good boy. And for the first time in my life, I believed those words. I was enough. exactly as I was. And tomorrow, when the sun rose, I would wake up a different person. Not because I had fundamentally changed who I was, but because I had finally stopped fighting it. The hard part was still to come. The conversations I'd have to have. The truths I'd have to speak. The losses I might have to face. But for the first time, I wasn't facing it alone. There was someone on the other side of a phone screen who saw me, who understood, who called me brave when I just felt terrified. And maybe that was enough to start. Maybe courage wasn't the absence of fear. Maybe it was just the decision to be real, even when the fear threatened to swallow me whole. And today, in that patrol car, hands cuffed and heart open, I had made that choice. I had chosen to be seen. And somehow, against all odds, against all the fears that told me it would be the end of everything, being seen didn't destroy me. It set me free. Thank you, Raphael, I thought, as I finally surrendered to sleep. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for staying. Thank you for showing me that there is life on the other side of fear. And thank you for giving me the courage to start living it. Tomorrow would be the first day of the rest of my life. And for the first time, I was looking forward to seeing it begin.